Ready? Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm Nat Hunter, and I'm co-director of design here at the RSA. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all here this evening for the opening event in a new series of talks and discussions to mark the RSA Student Design Awards 90th year. The RSA Student Design Awards, it's a global curriculum and competition that encourages emerging designers to apply their skills to a wide range of practical problems. If you want to find out more, ask me later, or there's Severa here, or Rebecca will both be around later. So before we begin, just a gentle reminder that we're being filmed tonight, so please turn your phones to silent. Also, we're live streaming over the RSA's website, so welcome to everyone who's watching live. And you can get involved in the discussion by using the hashtag RSA Design if you're not actually in the room. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker. Aral Balkan is an experienced designer. He's a programmer and he's a social entrepreneur. He's the founder of IndiePhone, an ambitious project to crowdfund a new smartphone that will empower consumers to own their own data. So I'm not going to say any more because he's going to tell you all. It's my great pleasure to welcome Aral Balkan.
Thank you. How many of you know what this is? This graph, specifically this point on this graph, is the point at which Facebook knows that you have begun your next relationship. Whether or not you've explicitly told Facebook that you've begun your next relationship by setting your relationship status. So how does Facebook know this? They know because of these little black dots. Those little black dots are the number of timeline posts between you and another person. And the horizontal axis is days, specifically 100 days leading up to when your relationship status actually changes. So what interests me about this is, when does Facebook know that you're going to start a new relationship within those 100 days? Is it possibly before you know? And perhaps a more important question, who owns this intelligence? Who owns this data? Now, Facebook released this study as part of a blog post, and there were comments on it, and somebody asked this question: is this anonymized data available? And Facebook said, we're sorry, we don't even release anonymized data. It's strictly for our use. So the answer to who owns this data, of course, here is Facebook. So I don't know if you've been following Facebook at all recently, but they just bought a messaging application called WhatsApp for $19 billion. Why was WhatsApp worth $19 billion to Facebook? Well, it's quite simple. What they bought were the mobile phone numbers of 450 million people, but more importantly, the right to eavesdrop on all of their future conversations, should they desire. So you might say, well, okay, so what? Right, Aral, it's fine, it's a product, if we don't like it, we don't have to use it, it's not like these things are essential. Well, I beg to differ. To understand why this is so important, we have to evaluate how our relationship to technology has evolved over the last 30 to 40 years. Now, computers once were these external, cold, impersonal devices that filled up entire rooms, and we had to actually drive to one if we wanted to use it. Today, that couldn't be further from the truth. We wear them on our persons. They can't get more personal than that. We wake up with our mobile phones, we go to bed with our mobile phones. That's very personal. Whereas computers once were disconnected from the world around them, disconnected from one another, and unaware of the world itself. Today, they are always on. They're always seeing. They're always hearing. They have a plethora of sensors by which they can feel the world around them and are aware of the world around them. So today, it's not too much of a stretch to say that we are cyborgs. Not in that we actually embed ourselves with technology necessarily, but in that we extend our biological capabilities via technologies. These technologies are what we use to both experience and manipulate the world around ourselves. And whether or not these technologies work well or not, well, that's really important because they are essential to our lives. And when they work well, they empower us. When they don't work so well, they enfeeble us. So the question then becomes, who owns these tools? And today, that answer is a handful of companies: Apple, Facebook, Google, Twitter. And what's common with these companies is that they're all closed silos. And a subset of these companies also share a business model, the business model of free. So what? Free's fine. I love free, right? What could possibly be wrong with free? Well, if some of you are thinking this way, you're going to love this new startup that I'm going to tell you about right now. It's called Snail Mail. And I am very excited about Snail Mail because we have solved a very important problem. We have solved the problem of real mail. That's right. Snail Mail will give you free real mail forever. You can send as many letters as you want, as many packages as you want, to as many people as you want around the world, free forever. Who thinks this is a great idea? Who would use this? Who would use Snail Mail? Some of you feel it coming, right? They're like, there's a catch here. Well, there is a catch. And the catch is that we do read your letters. We do open and we do read them, but we only do this so that we can give you helpful hints and suggestions based on what we've read. It may be correct or not. We're trying to understand what you're saying. But don't worry, because we will put all of this back in the envelope, and you wouldn't even know that we were here. So who'd still use this? There's usually one. There we go. There's always one person. It's free. I'll use it. For the rest of you, you use Gmail, right? Now, there may not be a person there reading each one of your letters, but there is an algorithm. There is a computer. So that's Snail Mail. That's snailmail.com. Do tell your friends. I think it's going to be big. I'm really excited about this. So why does Google do this? Are they evil? Is there a conspiracy theory? No. You don't need conspiracy theories when you have the simplicity of business models. It is simply their business model to monetize data. Therefore, just like the mutant plant from outer space from the musical Little Shop of Horrors, Audrey 2, who starts out as a little sapling that needs just drops of blood and then ends up eating whole people, Google needs your data to grow. It's just their business model. And how do they get your data? Via a variety of ways. One being services. So remember that Google also started out as a sapling, right? They just started out as a search engine. That's all they did, right? They weren't even tracking you back then. They stumbled onto their business model. But today's Google is a very different beast. It's a plethora of services. Do you want a place to put all of your files? Please put them on Google Drive. Of course, Google will look through all of your files to try and understand you better, to try and get to know you better. Do you have pictures that you've taken? Put them on Picasa. Of course, Google will be analyzing who's in those pictures. So again, try and get to know you better. And the same with, if you want to keep in touch with your friends, use Google+. They have your social graph. Use Google Hangouts and Google Chat, and they can see what you're saying to your friends. We mentioned Google Mail at the beginning. Now, with Google Mail, some of you might also say, well, you know, Aral, it's our decision, right? You know, I'm not hurting anyone else here. I can choose to accept the terms of this relationship that Google presents for me and use it. But it's not exactly that. Because take Google Mail, right? You might say, I'm okay with Google knowing the contents of the letters that I write, the emails that I write. What about the people who email you? Now, if you're using a custom domain, they may not even know that Google is going to be reading what they've written. They've never given consent for that. So in that way, it's a lot like smoking and secondhand cigarette smoke. It also affects other people. So how else do they get data? Well, they have games. ReCAPTCHA. Who's used a ReCAPTCHA on a forum, on an online forum here? Yes, some of you? Okay, awesome. And it's great, right? It's very useful. It protects the form, but there are 2 words, and they're very open about it. They say, you know, help us to read the books that we've digitized by telling us what this second word that we don't know is, and we know the first word so that we can prove that you're human and we can protect this form that way. That's nice. Sometimes they have actual games. Ingress is a free game from Google that you can download and you can play. And the way you play it is you run around town and try to find monuments and then hack into them with this game. And what you're really doing, though, as you're playing this fun free game, is you're giving Google very hard to come by data on pedestrian walking patterns. So when I think of this, I think of rats in a maze, as we would in a laboratory. Let's just put them out there, see what they do, and study them, right? But okay, so maybe Google's services are not for you, and you can say, I'm not going to use this. And for a company that needs your data, they've lost right at that point, so they can't let it stop there. What's the next step? We can give you devices. We can give you beautiful, beautiful devices like these Nexus phones. Have you seen them? They're a really great experience. They really are. Google understands user experience now. And they're half the price of an iPhone. How amazing is that? I mean, does Google have twice the economies of scale of Apple? You know, Tim Cook is meant to be a supply chain guy. Is he asleep at the helm? No. These are subsidized devices. What these are beautiful, gorgeous experiences, beautiful, gorgeous data entry devices that Google says, here, take these and give us your data, right? The same with their tablets, the same with their Chromebooks. What they've done here is they've made your sign-in to your device your Google username and password. So at that point, it doesn't matter what service you use, they will still get some data, and that's how they make money. So it makes perfect sense. And they're not, again, doing this because there's some conspiracy, but it is the goal of experience design, as I see it, to create the experience machine. Now, this is a theoretical device that I've come up with to explain where we want to be ideally. The experience machine is a machine that knows everything about the world, it knows everything about you, and it can read your mind. If we could get to this point, we could all go home as designers, right? So everything about you, we know how Google tries to get that information via its services, devices. Read your mind, that is what the ultimate aim is as designers. We want to know what you want to do before you want to know it. In fact, Amit Singhal, who was head of search, or is head of search at Google, said, I want my search engine to be the expert who knows me the best. It needs to know you so well that sometimes you don't need to ask it the next question. Right? This is the goal that we have. And to know everything about the world. Right? So what is there? There's Google Earth. Right? Google Earth is great satellite imagery. There's Google Maps. That's really awesome. Google Street View, right? It's not always up to date, as I found last night, but really great. And the Street View cars, who's seen the Street View car going through? So that's Google trying to get more information about the Earth. And there's some places that the Street View car can't go, so there's the Street View trike. And there are places where the Street View trike can't go, but Google needs data. So there is the Street View snowmobile. But there are internal spaces. So there is the Street View trolley for museums, etc. And finally, if they can't get there with a trolley, there is a Street View backpack. So the one place, though, that they can't go is your home, right? Or your workplace. Even if they have one of these backpacks on with this strange thing protruding from it, or quite possibly because of that, you probably won't let them into your home. So that's why they need you, right? How many of you have heard of Google's latest project, Project Tango? Project Tango is a new phone. And what Project Tango does is it has depth sensors and motion tracking camera, and it maps the interior spaces around you as you're walking around with this phone so that Google can actually see inside the interior spaces that you're walking in and recognize objects in it, etc. So basically, again, because they can't get into your home and into your businesses, it's so much easier for you to with their fancy toy, right? Why? Again, not a huge conspiracy. They just need as much data as they can get. That's how they make money. It's very, very, very simple. So they have services, and they have devices, right? So what is the next step, though? Because you can say, well, my gosh, all right, well, I'm not going to use their devices. And then they've lost. What's the third step? What is the end game if your business model is monetizing data? The end game is connectivity. So if they can make your sign-in to the internet your Google sign-in, then no matter what device you use, they can get valuable data, right? They're not cut off entirely. That's exactly what they're trying to do with Google Fiber, currently in Kansas in the US. But what about the next 5 billion? We keep hearing about the next 5 billion, and these poor, poor souls apparently just really need to get on the internet. This is the only problem they have, and these Silicon Valley companies are just trying so hard to be the ones that get them connected to the internet and really save them. What about them? Well, for them, Google has Google Loon. They're going to give them internet access with balloons. So in the future, there might actually be a whole nation whose notion of the internet is something you sign into with your Google username and password. And of course, Facebook's trying to do the same thing with internet.org. So just like Audrey 2 from the Little Shop of Horrors, who needs blood to grow, these free services need your data to grow. They are not necessarily evil, or there's no conspiracy theory, but they spy on you because it is their business model to spy on you, right? The business model of free is the business model of corporate surveillance. So you might have heard the saying, if you're not paying for it, you're not the product, you're not the customer, you're the product being sold. Well, in this case, I prefer you are the quarry being mined. You are the livestock being farmed. And really, it's not even about your data. Your data is just raw materials. That's what's being mined. It's raw materials for something that's way more valuable, for your profile, for the virtual you, the digital self, the simulation of you, your sim that these companies create to understand more about you. Why? Because I can't take you and I can't put you in a lab and prod you. There are laws against that, to see how you react to things, to see what your fears are, your ambitions are, right? I can't do that right now because your corporeal self has rights. But if I can simulate you, if I can have enough information about you that I can build a simulation of you, I can put that simulation in a lab. And I can prod it, and I can psychoanalyze it, and I can study it all I want using whatever techniques I want. Because your simulation has no rights under the law today. So that's one of the things that we need to change. This is not just a technical issue. This is also a matter of legislation. You might say, Raul, you know what? So what? I'm okay with all of this. And you know what? If I set my privacy settings on there to private, then they don't share anything. It's fine. I'm okay with it. Not really. Ever since 9/11, things have been different. After 9/11, in the United States, they formed the Information Awareness Office. This is the actual logo, right? And its goal was to achieve total information awareness. Now, if that's your goal, right, do not make this your logo. People get scared. You know, a pyramid with an all-seeing eye shooting lasers at the world. Don't do that. So people got scared, and they said, oh, sorry, no, we won't do that anymore. But, of course, if you've been following the Snowden leaks from last year, they didn't stop this program. And if you've been following, you also know that the NSA really needs to hire a PowerPoint designer. Well, there is one thing about this slide that we do have to appreciate. Microsoft was first at something, and that doesn't happen every day. So, credit where credit is due. So what were they sharing? What were they sharing? Everything. Everything that we thought we had set to private was being shared. Why? Because it's so much easier for governments to ask these third-party services for data that you have volunteered to them because it's not under the same protections under the law, right? As Bruce Schneier, the security expert and cryptographer, says, the NSA didn't wake up and say, hey, let's just spy on everybody. They looked up and they said, the corporations are spying on everyone. Let's get in on the game, right? So if this is the case, I'm sure that the people who run Google and run Facebook are really concerned about this, right? And they want to make something, they want to do something about it. So let's hear from Eric Schmidt, who is ex-CEO and current executive chairman of Google. What does he think about this stuff? He says, there's been surveillance for years. I'm not going to pass judgment on that. It's the nature of our society. But Eric, what should we do?
If you have something that you don't want anyone to know, maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
If you have something you don't want everyone to know, maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Why didn't I think of this, right? Now, Eric is actually a stand-up guy. Right? He didn't just say this. He wanted to prove to the world that this was true. So he went out and he created some websites and he put up his own images and videos. And some of my favorites are Eric's toiletantics.com. Interesting videos there. And then there's Eric's favorite sexytimes.com. Some very interesting pictures and videos. My favorite is Eric's masturbationadventures.com. Now, these websites don't exist, and nor should they, because